We did a little paper thing, or did we forget that?
Um, I told if you have a question.
Yeah, if you got any questions, stuff that's come up, why don't you just write it down on a sheet of paper. We'll look at it later, because I know sometimes once we get started, everybody forgets. If you don't, that's fine. I'll just do a little song and dance. One of the things that we're sort of here to look at is what it's like to be a spirit living in a body. Body is pretty full of sensations, isn't it? Every time you turn around, it's feeling something, sensing something. And most of us sort of, after a while, think that that's what we are. Is that body that's sensing everything. We kind of forget that there is a spirit that's living in that body that isn't going to be there forever. And it might have slightly different interests than what the body's interested in. Isn't it about right? We're kind of stuck with what the body says we ought to be doing. Really aren't even aware of what that is that the body says you ought to be doing. We're just sort of stuck in it. So we have a little picture that we work with a lot to try to get an understanding. And this little part down here, that's the body. Okay? We like to remind people that out of everything that you are, that's about 0.1%. But it's about the only part that we really know. And then we say that there is in that body a spirit that is aware of all the sensations that the body is having, that give me the experience of being in this interesting place called planet Earth, okay? Which is just an illusion created by senses. If you were here without a body, you would not see it the way that you do in the body. You know that? If somehow, which you can't do, of course, but somehow you could just kind of blip on out and get disconnected from the senses and figure out how to look around anyway, even though you don't have any senses to do it with, it wouldn't look like this. Everything that we're experiencing is because of the way our sensory system works. That makes sense, doesn't it? All the nervous system and all the senses do is just take little waves of energy that come at us and translate it into a sensation. And everything that we experience really is just little bits of energy hitting a little cell somewhere that translates it into some kind of sensation for you. And that determines what you're experiencing. Awareness is the part of us that actually experiences all of that. That's sitting there saying, I'm feeling the temperature, I'm seeing a bunch of people, I can tell what the humidity is, I can tell that the sun sort of doesn't like us today, it's hiding behind clouds, all these things, okay? That's that spirit. Without that, there's no one experiencing all the things the body senses. And this is what we kind of want to talk to today. Is that awareness that's stuck in the body, having an interesting earth experience of being a human being, probably gotten a little lost somewhere along the way, doesn't quite know what it's doing anymore. And maybe we can sort of remind it what it came here to do. That makes sense? That, by the way, is about 0.9% of what a human being is. So we accounted for 1% now. Okay? The rest of it is something we call X around here. Because when I was a little one in school, they said, you don't know what something is, put an X there, maybe you'll find out someday. And about 99% of me is unknown to me. I know about this, don't I? I know about the part, I may not be able to put it in words. This is a tough one to put in words, isn't it? That part of ourselves. This is I'm experiencing this. Because it is a spirit. It's not a thing. And all of our words are about things, aren't they? So the words that we have for this don't work too good. And I know a lot of times people kind of look at me like, what are you talking about? What is that awareness? Well, you can't really answer that question, you see, because all of our words would turn it into a thing, and it's not. It's an invisible spirit that lives in a body and shares living in the body with another invisible spirit that we call X, which is also me. Now we're really confused, huh? At least in words. This little thing that we call X is the part of life, some vast being that we don't understand too good, and given a lot of names on this planet, that actually lives with every individual awareness in a body. So it's the innate part. You understand what the word innate means? Kind of like the stuff that's intrinsic to you as opposed to the whole thing. Does that make sense? And we're sharing the experience of being a human being with that great, vast intelligence called life all the time, except we're unaware of it. It's an interesting thing walking around, seeing people being lonely and feeling unloved and all these things people like to do, when in fact they're right next to somebody who loves them dramatically and would tell them all the time if they would pay a little bit of attention. And I don't know about anybody else, but I've never been alone. Not in that sense, ever. That being is always with me. I can be sitting in a room all by myself and haven't seen another human being for a week, but I'm not alone. Okay? Except in the real sense of that word, which maybe means all one, which I think is what the word alone means, all right? In that sense, I'm as alone as you can get. And the relationship between these is that the awareness has the job of all of this, of taking all the stuff that comes into the body and says, here's what's going on in my world, all the things that we sense that are so distracting, aren't they? To the point where most of us really can't experience anything else but all the things that the body is saying, this is what's going on for me right now. Isn't that about right? We can't even really dream of, well, I guess we can dream, but we can't even really pay much attention to anything else except what I'm sensing right now, what I'm feeling, all the emotions that are going through this little form, all the thoughts. Takes all that in, and it describes what it's experiencing out of those sensations. In other words, it makes sense out of it and says it's a room full of people. The body just reports all sorts of sensations. The awareness says this is a room full of people, and some weird fellow is yapping up in front of the room full of people, okay? And it tells that to X, that innate part of a living spirit that allows us to be alive. Without X, there would be no life. I can't make life happen as the awareness itself, okay? Life comes from only one place, no matter where you find it. I don't care if it's in a tree or a squirrel. I'm sitting out there watching a little squirrel run around, and that's X too, you know. X seems to have this apparently great desire to play roles. That's one of the things I've noticed about that unknown being called X. He really likes playing roles. So I watched him out there playing the role of squirrel for a while this morning. It was kind of fun, you know, and right next to it there were some little birds, and that was X playing the role of birds with squirrels. And there's some people over there, they're playing the role of human being, okay? all the same thing, all the same spirit called life, or X. We tell X what we're experiencing, and X then gets the body to act. Okay? So maybe I say that I'm going to talk to some people today, and I tell X they've showed up, and I say, but I don't know exactly who's coming, so X says, well, tell Mida when to tell you to start. I say, well, that sounds like a good idea, so X moves something in here and breathes and does all those things, which I don't know how to do, and the next thing you know, I'm telling Mida to say when, okay? I can't do that, can you? I don't know how to move this stuff. I don't even know what it is, you know? I've never even seen it. Apparently some people go around cutting it up and look at it, okay, but I don't know how to make it work, do you? All I know how to do is sit here and say, I want to say something. And this incredible intelligence that's sharing this body with me pulls the little strings here and there, starts some nerves running, releases a few funny chemicals, and the next thing you know, this body's talking, okay? But I don't do that. I experience all the sensations of doing that. So you see what I mean about those sensations being so distracting. People have been talking for a very long time about being a spirit in a body and experiencing it the way that we just described, really. If you think about it, you probably read some other descriptions that are kind of similar, haven't you? But the truth is that we don't experience it that way, do we? We experience it as, I said something. Completely immersed in the sensation that goes along. Just lost in that sensation of the body saying, I said something. And that's what it is for us. Except for one little thing. What is that I? When you're lost in that sensation of the body, it's just a body, isn't it? It's just a body saying, walking around saying, I. It doesn't have any experience of itself except for all the sensations that tell it what it feels, what it's doing, what it's saying. Isn't that about right? So we're sort of lost in all of these sensations. I think if we're going to take a look around the planet Earth and see what's going on here, and say, what do I want to do with my stay here? We might have to kind of get back to a place where we can be just the spirit in the body that's saying, I'm experiencing this, but I'm not stuck thinking I'm actually the body and all the sensations that go with it. Because they're kind of programmed to respond only in one way, aren't they? With survival. But the only thing the body can do is the same thing those little squirrels are doing out there and the birds, okay? Run toward things that I sense as feeling good, and run like hell from things that I sense as feeling bad, and that's about all it does. And we humans have made a very complicated, sophisticated thing out of a very simple behavior, haven't we? Running towards nice sensations and running like hell away from bad ones, and we've made it something noble. We got all kinds of words for it. Some people like the sensation of learning, so they do this complicated thing of writing books down and then studying them years later. And all they're doing is the same thing that squirrel out there is doing. They like that sensation of knowing a lot of stuff, so they go and they cram their head full of a lot of stuff because it feels good. Other people hate cramming their head full of a lot of stuff, and they run like hell from it. Isn't that right? And they can't see what all those people that learn all that stuff get out of it. They think they're nuts. But it's all the same game as that little squirrel that had a little sensation called hunger, and so it went running everywhere looking for something to get rid of that sensation. See? That thing with getting distracted by the senses is pretty powerful, isn't it? In fact, I go so far as to say just what I did say. We'll put it in real blunt terms. For most people, that's all that's going on, is sensation. That's all they care about. Does this feel good or does it feel bad? And their whole life is about trying to control circumstances so that all they ever have is pleasant sensations. Now somehow I suspect that as a spirit that could be conscious of being life, I'm like that little squirrel out there that'll never know it's a squirrel. Okay? It's just stuck doing what a squirrel does. But it will never wake up one morning and say, I'll be damned, I'm a squirrel. You know, right? That little pigeon out there ain't going to do it either. It's not going to wake up one morning and say, I'm a pigeon. How did this happen? See? Human beings seem to be the only form of life on this planet that can wake up in the middle of it and say, wow, look, I went to sleep one day and I woke up a man. What do you know? How'd that happen? Except we just don't do that. We become a slave to those sensations. And we spend the rest of our life trying to figure out how to keep them being only a certain kind of sensation. Isn't that pretty much what we're doing? Can you kind of look at your life and see that all this effort is to make sure that every sensation that you experience is pleasant to you? That's kind of what human life is about. We build big dams so that we can keep the water from going in a place that would be unpleasant to us and maybe use it to turn it into electricity so we could make things that are pleasant to us. We build huge buildings so that we can create a place where things from the other side of the world are shipped over here so you can have them so it'd be pleasant to you. And yet somehow all this effort at keeping things pleasant don't seem to be working too good, does it? Is that all you ever get is pleasant sensations? And you get a few of the other kind that you don't like a lot. So here we got a race of the most incredible beings that we can conceive of who've bent all of their energy towards one end for thousands of years. Let's make this a nice place. And as best I can tell, they failed miserably. What do you think? You think this is a place where everything is hunky-dory and pretty and lovely all the time? Well, that's what we're trying to do, isn't it? We've been trying to do that for a real long time. I read a book once that was apparently somewhere around 4,500 years old. And they were doing the same thing then. You know about that book? It's called Ecclesiastes. You can find it in any Bible. It's an account of the world, something like 300 to 4,500 years ago. Nobody knows exactly how old it is. We just know that it's many thousands of years old. And you read it, and it could have been written yesterday. So for thousands of years, we've been working to get this thing, and we haven't made it yet. And somehow, I don't think we're going to get it tomorrow either. But that's our life. Okay? What we're here maybe to do is to wake up in the midst of this and say, all these sensations are just to let me know what's going on. That's all they're for. It doesn't really matter whether one of them's pretty or one of them's ugly or whether one of them makes me feel good or one of them makes me feel bad. It's just to let me know what's going on in my world. I get bad ones, so I know I'm being hurt. That's really bottom line, isn't it? A bad sensation comes along and says, hey, Phil, that's not good for you. That's all they're for. And we've made that a whole world. I don't think that's what a spirit came here to do, because it sounds kind of petty, doesn't it? Kind of beneath us. To say the sum total of my life is to try to control sensations, which is impossible. somehow. I just can't imagine that this incredible life force said, I'm going to bend all my energy for the next several trillion years to creating a form and then making sure it never has an unpleasant sensation. Because I've sort of noticed that being is pretty smart. That don't sound so smart to me. That sounds actually kind of stupid. I know. I'll make this body, and it'll have to know when it's being damaged, so I'll give it the ability to sense pain. And then I'll get inside of it, and I'll make sure it never senses pain. That just sounds stupid to me. It's impossible, isn't it? So that don't sound like the act of a brilliant intelligence. To say, I'm going to do what can't be done, and I know it can't be done because I made it that way. One of the other interesting things about this that I try to constantly remind people of is that whatever this part is, it knows how to do everything. So I don't have to. The part that says I, that awareness function, doesn't have to know how to do everything. It doesn't actually have to know how to do anything, except in the world that human beings have made. Around here we call that the man-made world, okay? Somebody's got to know how to fix cars, because we made up the idea of cars, okay? So you may need to know how to do things for your job. The things in the man-made world, how to put a bunch of food together and turn it into something somebody wants to eat. All those kind of hows. But the living part, which is what this is, life itself, we don't have to know anything about. I do not have to know anything about digestion to eat, do I? How many of you even know what is known about digestion other than what they shoved down your throat in elementary school? You've gone out and made a great study of all that has been learned on the subject of digestion so you could make sure that your food digested real good. Or you just eat and it all sort of happens. Because that being already knows how to do it, doesn't it? So when it comes to living, just being able to walk around and respond to my environment appropriately, I don't know how to, I don't have to know how to do anything except pay attention. That's it. And that's my job, is to say what's going on. So if I say I want to move my arm, I sort of need to pay attention to make sure that things don't change. Isn't that right? Because I might decide to move it, and then something else moves in the way, and I go whoop and hurt myself. So I got to kind of pay attention while it's happening, because things change while the motion. You see, if I decide that I'm going to drive to the store, I don't really have to know how to move my hands on all those controls, do I? That's the living part. But I do kind of have to pay attention that nobody else is in the road. X isn't going to do that for me. Okay. But if somebody does come along and sort of decide they're going to run into me, don't rely on me to get out of the way. All I'm going to do is say, X, we're dying shortly. Unless something happens here real quick, we're dying. You ever been in that situation? Been on the freeway or something and you're just about to, like, split? Are you the one that got out of the way? Or did it just somehow happen? You know how you kind of go into that little altered state and everything gets real clear here? I'm about to die and I don't see any way out of it. You ever been in that situation? And apparently it didn't happen, because I notice you're still sitting here. What moved that car? See? It gets a little clearer in that survival situation, doesn't it? I'm not doing this. I'm really aware of it being done. But I'm not sitting here deciding, okay, the smart thing to do is to turn the wheel this way. It just sort of happens, doesn't it? And then afterwards, you sit and think about how smart it was and how it all worked out, and maybe tremble at the thought of what might have happened, okay? But during that moment, it gets real clear. I ain't doing this, doesn't it? Does that make sense? I could have that experience all the time. It's a little thing around here that we call living effortlessly, okay? I could have that experience all the time, not just when another car is coming at me and I'm about to die. You know, David, you told a little story about somebody out there pointing a gun at you and saying, I want your money recently, okay? Did you handle that situation?
I just seem to go on some sort of autopilot.
It's odd, isn't it? And when it really comes right down to a matter of life and death, something just sort of takes over. It isn't there most of the time. And it always handles it just fine, I've noticed, if it's possible. Wouldn't it be interesting to walk around in that state all the time instead of waiting to almost die before it happens? And just be sitting there reporting, just like I'm sure David did, you know, these people are kind of cuckoo, and they got a gun pointed at my head. And the least little thing could set them off. Isn't that about what was being reported at that moment in time?
It was such a blur to me that I can't really remember.
Okay. I can understand that. And something just deals with it. It just responds to that. I experience all of that dealing with it, okay? I experience all the sensations that go along with dealing with this thing, okay? But I've noticed in those times when somebody's pointing a gun at this head, that a role just sort of takes over, okay? Because I've had that experience, and I did pay attention to it, and that's exactly what was going through this head. You know, these two fellows, they got these guns, and they're kind of cuckoo. And I know how cuckoo people are. The least little thing will set them off, and you don't know what it is, do you? You ever been around somebody that's kind of slightly crazy? And you maybe say, it's a nice day today, and they just go wacko on you, isn't that right? And you're sitting there saying, I just said it was a nice day. You don't know what's going to set somebody like that off, do you? And I sat and I looked at those people, and I said, you know, this is interesting. They got the guns. They're pointing them at me, and they're terrified. They are scared to death. Now, I know what happens when people are scared. The least little threat, and they're going to use that weapon, aren't they? And that's what I was reporting. The last thing in the world that I want to do is threaten these two folks. Because I kind of like to get out of this. I don't care about my money, but I kind of like to keep this body for a few more years. And somehow some role just sort of takes over, and all of a sudden you're the most unthreatening thing that could ever happen on planet Earth. And I'm not too good at that role normally. Most people say I kind of threaten them a lot, you know. They get around me and they kind of get all on edge. And it's all of a sudden I was just the most peaceful, unthreatening person you'd ever want to meet. Until they walked out of that building, you see. I didn't do that. I'm not even sure I know how. Okay? That's what we're trying to say here, that there is a living spirit that we're sharing this experience with that is actually 99% of me. We're kind of divorced from. We don't know it anymore. That knows how to do all these things. So a lot of places where I go where people talk about this stuff, they have these long, complicated, involved instructions about things you got to do. Some of them, they've got descriptions up there, something or other, about how it all works and what you've got to do to make it work and all this stuff. And you know what? You don't have to know about that anymore, and you have to know about digestion. Because you're not the one who's going to do it. Any more than you're the one that's going to digest food. I think about most of the job that I got is to trick people into telling X. I want to do something with my life. He's the one who's going to do it, not you. All you got to do is say, I want to. Just do that little thing here that says, just like when somebody points a gun at your head or another car is coming at you, I want to live. And somehow or another it happens. You don't have to know how it's done. Okay? I've made a little bit of a study of it. I find it fascinating. It don't do me any good any more than I can enhance digestion by going out and studying how the body digests food. I think if I knew everything there was to know on the subject of digestion, I'd probably do it about the same way as I do now. What do you think? I don't think I could make it any better or any worse by studying about it. I think if I went and studied all about growth, that I probably would not be able to grow an inch. Because I know all about the subject, okay? Now, I suppose maybe if I found out what chemical it is that triggers growth, I could take that in, okay? But I couldn't just sit here and say, okay, I understand growth. Now I'm going to sit here and I'm going to meditate until I get that little part of the body to release some more of that growth hormone or whatever it is, you see. I don't think I can do that. I suppose if I were real cuckoo, I could probably tell X I want to grow an inch, and he could probably do it all by himself. But all my knowledge isn't going to make it happen. Okay? And I'm actually joking about that. I have no idea whether X would do that or not. Okay? I never tried it. I don't know if you can really grow just by sitting and telling X that you want to. He is another intelligent being, and sometimes he says no. Not very often, but occasionally you tell him something and he just says, that's silly, I ain't doing that. Most of the time he does whatever you ask, but some things he does make up his own mind on. Thank goodness, because I've told him some real stupid things over the years. Like, I'd like to die today, I'm really miserable, I've had it here, I want out. He just says, I don't feel like it today, Phil. So I'm still here, okay? I'm kind of glad he did that personally. He just ignored me that particular time. Most of the time I say I want to do something, and he goes off and does it, okay, and we have a good time together. But occasionally he's just sort of ignored me and said, oh, you're just in a silly mood today. I'm not paying attention to you. I think he might do that if I said I wanted to grow an inch. And what the hell is up your ass now? You get the screwiest notions, okay? But really, if one can understand this and really experience it so it becomes real and not just a set of words that somebody blapped out for a while, it's an amazing thing. Because I see all I have to do to accomplish what people have said for thousands of years is the most incredible spiritual experience that anybody wants to do is just say, I want to, and mean it. For a while. Okay? Because it doesn't happen overnight. I know that that's a story you've been told, that enlightenment just sort of falls on you one day out of the ceiling, you know, and then it changes everything, and it's a little one-time event. But don't work that way. Like everything else that X does, he does it over time, right? I don't know anything else that X does instantaneously, do you? Everything here in this physical world takes a little bit of time in the right place and the proper circumstances to do it. Isn't that about right? I don't think I can cook food just any old place I want just because I decide I want to cook food. I think I'm probably going to have to arrange for the proper circumstances, like maybe having a little food there. That'd probably be the first thing I'd have to do. Isn't that right? If I wanted to cook, I'd probably have to get something to cook. And I might have to arrange for a little fire to be there, you know. So everything takes the proper time, place, and circumstances, doesn't it? And that, by the way, is X's job to arrange that. That's part of the how. A lot of things, I don't know what the proper time, place, and circumstances are for them. I don't know. I've never done it before, you see. After I've done it 4 or 5 times, I might have some idea. But the first time, I don't know what it takes. But X does. Okay? So I may not have to just say it once. I really want to experience something else. And we're going to talk about what that might be as this weekend goes on. Right now, I just want to get this relationship thing where maybe we can see that our picture of ourselves is not accurate. Okay? But I may not be able to just do that once. I may have to do it for a period of time while it's being set up. Have you ever really wanted something, but it takes time? And you get started, and you're real gung-ho, and you work real hard at it, you do all sorts of things, and somewhere in the middle, your enthusiasm kind of wanes, isn't that right? Some other little thing comes along that looks more interesting, and so you kind of stop saying, I really want this. Did it happen? Or did it stop when you said, I'm not interested anymore, you see? You ever had that experience? You know what I'm talking about? Getting real excited about something, you work at it real hard, and get a little distracted somewhere in the middle, and you just never finish it. So it might not be just saying one time, I want this. It might be saying it for enough time that X can arrange for the time, place, and circumstances, and when it's all set up, and he says, okay, I'm ready, or you're still there to say, yes, I still want it. Because if you say, no, I've changed my mind, he's not going to do it. He's not going to shove something down your throat you don't want. That's not the relationship here. If that were the relationship, I would just be his puppet, wouldn't I? I wouldn't be a real life person. I would just be a puppet of whatever this thing called X is. I'd say, that looks like fun, and he'd say, it's not. Well, how am I supposed to know that, you see? Or I'd say, I don't want to do such and such, and he'd say, tough. I'm the one who runs the body, we're going to do that. I'd just be a puppet. That don't sound like fun. So pretty much it's up to me, okay, what we're going to do. So I could set it all up and have it, tell him I want it, and he'd arrange for it, and then when it gets there, look at it and say, I changed my mind. He'd say, okay, no problem. What do you want to do today? Okay. Our mind wants to know how, doesn't it? It does not feel comfortable saying, I'm going to do something, but I don't know how. I watch people all the time doing something for the first time, and most people are really uncomfortable. They're afraid they're going to look stupid in front of other people, isn't that right? And of course they do, because they're so worried about the whole thing while they're doing it, and they don't really know how, that they look insane. They don't just look stupid, they look crazy. But have you noticed that about yourself, that sometimes when you get in a brand new situation, that you sort of get all edgy and uncomfortable and kind of go a little nuts for a while? We think we have to know how with everything. I can't do something unless I know how. But what if it isn't true? What if I don't need to know how? What if that's just what happens when you're not aware of this relationship anymore? What if that's just what happens when you kind of lose this part of yourself, and it's not actually necessary? Think of all the years you put into knowing how to do things. Wouldn't it be funny if you didn't have to do that? That all those years you spent learning how, you could have just been doing it and be on to something else. Wouldn't you feel kind of silly? But that's the way it works. So I never talk about the how very much. What I talk about is the part that is my job, the what. What do I want? What's going on here? Oh boy, do I like what questions. Those I'm real good at. You ask me what questions, I can Just sit and ramble on about what, okay? Ask me how, I may not have much to say. Ask me why, I'll just laugh. I have no idea. Okay? I have no idea why of anything. One time I was doing something that a trade magazine found a little interesting, so they decided to interview, okay? And one of the things I kept asking over and over and over again is, why did you do this? And I just looked at him and said, I don't know. I don't know why I did it. Do you know why you do everything you do? I don't. I guess it's just like fun, you know. Thought came. I said, that sounds interesting. Went off and did it. I don't know why. And finally, after a while, I sort of looked at him and I said, you know, if you kind of stick to what, when, where, and how, we might get along pretty good. But if you keep asking these why questions, you're going to have the most boring interview you've ever seen, because my answer is just going to be the same every time. I don't know why I did it, okay? I can tell you what I did. I can tell you how I did it if you think your readers would be interested in that. But I don't know why. So they thought maybe that would be okay. They asked the other questions they're supposed to ask. I don't know why they were so fascinated with the why, you see. I'm not good at that one. But what I'm real good at, okay? That's my job. This is what's going on in my life. And I think I'll let this spirit deal with how to respond to it, okay? Not me. I don't know. When I give out information like this, I always like to give people a way to experience it. How am I going to, well, here I am with a how question. Oh, well, I'm stuck with it. How am I going to rely on this if I don't see it for myself? Because this is not the way things seem to work, is it? I mean, that's not our experience, is it? Our experience is you got to know how to do things. Isn't that right? I live in Los Angeles. You know how many actors there are in Los Angeles? Not many, actually. You know how many would-be actors there are in Los Angeles? So I'm constantly running into folks there that I'm working with. They just give anything to be an actor or an actress, okay? And they're always coming to me and giving me this list of things you have to do. They know how to do it. And I sort of look at them and say, then why aren't you? If you got the recipe, and you know exactly how you're supposed to break into the business, because you know and they call it the business, by the way. There is no other business but entertainment when you're in the entertainment business, okay? It's the business. But if you know so much about how to break into it, because, you know, there's this old thing that says that in a lot of the entertainment industry, that you can't get work until you have work, right? You can't be an actor until you've acted in something really big, and then, of course, everybody wants you. So it's kind of a tough thing to get into, and they know it. All of them know it, you see. But they all say, I know how to do it. I've talked to other people, and they say, you got to do this, you got to do that, you got to do all those things to get in. And I just sort of look at them and say, then why ain't you? You know how. Why don't you break the rules? Because apparently those rules don't work, because I noticed you got those rules from other would-be actors. I don't think you went to somebody who's making $3 million a year acting and said, how do you get in? I think you went to other people who aren't in. You see? Why don't you just sort of forget all that stuff and just sit around saying, I want to be an actor and see how it works out? Break the rules. Don't match our experience, does it? You got and they weren't there. You know, what's the big deal here? You ever had a sensation that wasn't true? Good grief. Okay? You can't sense life. You can only see it's there because it moves around, does things. But there's no way for a human being to sense it. We don't have anything to do that with. So it might be interesting for a period of time to just do a simple little experiment that says, let me see if I can see this is true by what it does. And I'm going to just be the awareness. And I'm going to watch the body doing all sorts of things that I decided I wanted to do and realize, you know what, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to walk. Anybody here know how to walk? Do you know there's nobody on planet Earth that knows how to walk? I know that folks that don't pay any attention to research imagine that walking is understood. I mean, if you had just sort of thought about it all by yourself one day, wouldn't you figure that somewhere there's somebody who knows about walking because we've been studying all this stuff? Wouldn't that just sort of be something you'd assume? It's not true. Nobody on this planet understands how to walk. And we've been studying it for several hundred years now, quite technically. Nobody knows how to do it. I never noticed that stopped anybody. I don't even know what muscles get used in what order. Do you? Hell, the truth is I don't even know what muscles are there. I never studied anatomy. Much less how to use them in the right order so that I don't just do like little kids do and fall on my butt. You know? I don't know how to do that. All I do is just say I want to walk across the room, and somehow or another it happens. And I can stand here and I can be aware of the fact that even though I don't know what I'm doing, somehow it's getting done. It takes some effort, because I got to get a little bit away from that sensory thing that says I'm doing this because I experience it, right? I have the experience of walking. I get all the sensations, all the feedback that says I'm walking. And I get deluded into thinking I'm the one who's doing the walking, but I'm not. I'm the one who's experiencing the walking. And watch that with everything. Watch it with driving the car. You know what all those controls do, but do you know how to make the body turn that wheel? Do you know how to make it step on a pedal? Do you know how to make it see? And maybe I could sort of see that there's something else going on in my life. And I might begin to get a sense of the fact that I'm sharing this experience with a vast intelligence. Now please understand, I do know about the modern theories, okay, that have replaced the concept of an indwelling spirit with vast intelligence. I do know about them, okay? You can tell I've kind of studied this stuff. I find it fascinating what science has learned. I also know it's incomplete, and it's full of invalid conclusions because it's incomplete, but I find it very intensely interesting personally, okay? I know about things like autonomic nervous systems and the reptilian brain, okay, and all that stuff, okay? And I still know that that is not a sufficient theory. It's easy to sit here and say that you got an autonomic nervous system. But what is it that starts that first little deposit of hormones into the bloodstream that fires off nerves that makes a muscle do what it do automatically? What does that? Why doesn't it just sort of randomly do it occasionally? If it's so automatic, every other automatic thing I ever saw does screwy things every now and again, okay? You ever seen any automatic thing that didn't occasionally go cuckoo and start doing things at the wrong time in the wrong order and stuff? Why doesn't the body do that? The only time it does that, as far as we can tell, is when it kind of starts breaking down and falling apart, which we call getting sick, isn't that right? But it isn't just walking around randomly firing nerves most of the time. I think maybe this relationship might describe it. It would be interesting to spend the time to experience it for myself. I'm not the walker, I'm the one that experiences the walking, and I'm the one that decided I wanted to walk. But I didn't do the walking. I don't know how. I don't know how to see. I don't know how to hear. I don't know how to eat. I don't know how to digest. I really don't know how to do much anything when you come right down to it as far as living is concerned, okay? I know how to do a lot of things in the man-made world. I'm one of those people that like studying. You know? I get kind of a charge out of it. So I know a lot of things of how's in the man-made world, but not about living. And just see if you can spend a few days practicing this, and it's an odd thing, but if you practice it for a period of time, there's an experience that goes along with it. And you may actually experience something where you get the sense of this vast intelligence that you share life with. And you do that maybe for a few weeks. You may develop a whole different way about going about life. Like I said, what I call doing it effortlessly. Because from my experience, all I do is say, what, I'm going to do this, and everything else just sort of happens, and I just go along for the ride. I'm a passenger. I pay attention. I make maybe new decisions about what I want to do, but I just sort of watch the whole thing happen. And I don't think many people have that experience. I think most people struggle their little tushes off trying to make it happen. Isn't that about right? And then there's a few crazy folks that run around saying, hey, you know what, you don't have to do that. All you got to do is say you want to and then just watch it all happen. And it's a weird thing, but when it just happens, so to speak, it happens a whole lot more efficiently, by the way, than your method of struggling to do your how of it. In fact, I might get it done in 2 minutes, what it'll take you a week or two to get done. Because I don't know how. I've noticed X's ways are a whole lot more efficient sometimes. They're screwy as heck. They're really screwy. And sometimes they mean that you got to be in the right spot at the right time for no apparent reason so you can run into somebody else, you know. His ways are real strange, full of odd coincidences seeming and all sorts of stuff, but they seem to be real efficient. I notice they get it done like that a lot of the time. And I see other people struggling to do it the right way, the way that everybody knows works, you know, and it sometimes takes them months to do the same simple thing that X gets done in a few minutes or a few days. Because he knows where everything is that you need. Okay? And all sorts of odd things start happening. I just moved recently. It was kind of raining. And all of a sudden, I just knew it was time to go pick up a few, you know, I don't know what it's like here, but where I live, there are certain little places where day laborers just kind of hang out, you know, waiting for somebody to come by and give them a job. Do they do that out here?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay, so you know what I'm talking about. All of a sudden, it's just like, do it now. So I went off and I picked up a few of these folks and said, we're going to move. And I noticed just as I was driving up, they were all walking off because it was raining. I got there just as they were leaving. Now, there's no way I could have known that it had to be done now. Okay? But X did. He said, you put this off for a couple more minutes and you ain't doing it today. We're going now. I didn't know why. I wasn't ready yet. But that's the kind of stuff that starts happening. Just weird little coincidences all the time. Because X knows everything that's going on. He always knows the proper time, place, and circumstance to do things. And you start living in a really effortless way. Okay? Are there any questions or comments about this? I think it's about time for a break. Oh, okay.
Does living effortlessly mean living with non-disturbance?
Hell no. No way. No, I get just as much disturbance as anybody else does.
Do you perceive it differently if it's non-disturbance?
No, I perceive it as disturbance.
Does that entail effort by definition?
Excuse me?
Wouldn't that entail effort by definition to have to, well,
No,
feeling disturbed?
I don't mind being disturbed. I think the effort comes from the fact that you don't like it and think you got to do something about it. Okay, somebody disturbs me, I just say I'm disturbed. I don't care. What's wrong with being disturbed? I mean, I live on planet Earth just like everybody else, and I don't sleep too much. Okay, and just like everybody else, I live here, and those stupid car alarms go off, just as I'm falling asleep. That disturbs me. I don't know about you. What do you do? Sometimes nobody comes to turn it off. I get up and say, well, I guess I wasn't sleeping after all. I can not sleep now. It's okay. I don't care. I think the effort comes from saying this shouldn't be happening to me. I don't care. It wouldn't be the first time I didn't sleep. I got lots of things to do. Get up and do something for a while until somebody finally comes and shuts the damn thing off, okay? It's just as disturbing to me as it is to anybody else. I just don't expect to be non-disturbed, unlike most people, okay? I expect to be disturbed if I'm going to live on planet Earth, so it don't bug me too much. I don't have to sit there and imagine in my mind all the things I'm going to do to deal with this. That's what makes it effortless, okay? I'm just as disturbed by it. I can't sleep either. But I don't sit around and think about how horrible that person is and how stupid car alarms are because nobody pays attention to them, all these things I hear people say about car alarms. I know all that. Yeah, they're pretty stupid things. And I also know that for some weird reason, the insurance companies all told you got to do it. I don't do it because I don't care if my car gets stolen, okay? I just don't care. I'll just go get another one. In fact, some of the cars I've had, I kind of hoped they would get stolen. Give me an excuse to go get another one, But no, you don't get non-disturbance.
Your basic state of mind is more...
Well, it's a little more peaceful, I'd say. Yeah, it's a little bit more peaceful and maybe more in harmony with the environment. I can be peaceful and in harmony with the car alarm at 2:30 in the morning, okay? I got no problems with that. I do understand the game. I think it's very amusing that the insurance companies make you do something that doesn't work so it'll save them money. I mean, it's kind of stupid, isn't it? You got to do it, okay? I don't know about here, but in California, you got to have insurance or you can't drive. It's all right. Now, the effortless part is really just what I said. That you get to the point where you rely on X to take care of the how. And so all that effort that's spent trying to figure out how to do it, and then trying to do it and all that stuff just is gone. Okay? It's just gone.
But the decision has to be sustained.
Sometimes. Sure. If something takes a little bit of time, you got to pay attention to the whole thing. Your job is to take all those sensations and turn them into a description of reality. I don't know that X is going to do that for you, okay? Because, like I said, he doesn't want puppets. He wants you to be a real live living being, okay? Not his little finger puppet. Because we're pretty dependent on X if what I'm saying is true, aren't we? I mean, I can't even breathe without it. I'm really dependent on it. I've never been that dependent on anyone, except when I was a little kid, okay? So if X wanted to, he could just turn us all into slaves. Just turn off the eyes for a month. We'd all be his abject slaves, wouldn't we? But apparently he doesn't want that. Because if that's what X wanted, he could have it in a second. Just say, I'm not going to let your legs move until you grovel on the floor before me and say how great I am. It amuses me, all these stories people tell about this so-called God that they worship, I mean, if God really wanted worship, he could get it. If that's what he wanted, it'd be real simple, wouldn't it? He wouldn't have to be begging us to do it. He wouldn't have to threaten us with something tomorrow, some terrible hereafter. All you have to do is just say, okay, None of your legs are going to work till you worship me. I don't think he cares about that stuff. He doesn't want slaves. If he wanted slaves, he'd have them. That's the part that is effortless. I was designed to pay attention. That's the way I'm made. That's not particularly tough. It's tough for us because, as we'll talk about shortly, we stopped doing it about the age of 5 and turned it over to an automatic function of the body. So we're all kind of weak. So I can see how that would sound like effort, okay? But it actually is not. It's what I was designed for. If you talk to somebody who was malnourished and had not had exercise for the last 25 years about walking down the block, it would seem like more effort than they could put out, wouldn't it? Just walking down the block. But is that effort to you, or is that pretty effortless because your body's in decent enough shape that you can kind of walk down the block, and it really is not effort, is it? You don't have to work at it. Maybe you might have to work to run around it or walk 4 miles or something, but not just down the block, you see. That's kind of the way I feel about attention. I don't take very much effort. But I'm not malnourished. Okay. And that's part of what this information is about, is to tell you how to get over the fact that you gave up at a very young age. Now, psychologically, we know that today. Do you know that? It's what has been said for a long time, that human beings give up at a very young age and stay inside the spirit part, a very young child. Never grow up. We now know that's true with science. Do you know what is known about the development of the personality? Do you know at what age it is actually developed? Does anybody have that fact?
Like 5, isn't it?
That's exactly correct, somewhere around 5 or 6. We now know that at the age of 5 or 6, you have as much personality as you're ever going to get. The only thing that happens to it after that is that experiences are added into it, but it basically is set at the age of 5 or 6. So if you got kids, you better pay real close attention for the first 4 or 5 years about what kind of person you want them to be, because after that it's too late. You can change a few little things here and there after that. But by 5 or 6, they got whatever personality they're going to have. And if you don't like it, well, tough. That's just the way it is. That's who they are now. Well, that's what people have been saying for a long time. I remember a really famous phrase on this that says, you must become as a little child again to enter into the kingdom of heaven. And everybody thinks, oh, I got to work at this. I got to learn how to be a little child. No. That is what you are in here, in the awareness as a little child. It says if you want to grow beyond that, you're going to have to stop pretending like you're not that. And just be what you are. It didn't mean become in the modern sense of you got to develop being a little child again. It just said you got to stop pretending like you're an adult, because you're not. People who've studied human beings have known this for thousands of years. We just found some new tools recently called science that are now confirming what's always been known. Okay. So part of this information is about helping that little kid to start growing again, so that it doesn't seem like such an effort just to pay attention for a period of time. Any other questions or comments before we take a break? This is the basis of the way we do things around here. Everybody's got their little way of approaching this, okay? This is the basis of the way we do things around here. Rely on X. I'll say what I want to do. X is going to do it. Okay? We don't go into lots of detailed knowledge and hows and spiritual exercises. We don't say you got to sit around and stare at the wall, for 3 hours a day and chant little words and stuff. No, learn to rely on X. That's quite enough. That's all you got to do. That's work enough. Because like I said, it really contradicts our view of reality, doesn't it? Okay? Let's take a break.